Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the latest project from Machine Games, previously famous for the latest Wolfenstein games. It aims to take the charm of the movies and translate it to the video game medium. The publisher, Bethesda, was kind enough to fly me out to LA to play the game early, and I want to talk about my experiences with the game and if I think you should be more or less excited for when it releases on December 9th. I want to, as always, talk about bias, as on one hand, I was flown out to LA and was put in a swanky ass hotel. Bros. They got a fucking fart chamber in this, John. But on the other hand, I'm not an Indiana Jones fan, and in fact, I've never seen the movies. It's not for any particular reason, but simply throughout my life, Indiana Jones has been a blind spot. But I think this actually gives me a unique perspective, as I can judge this game as a game and not necessarily as an Indiana Jones product. If you're looking for a review from a diehard Indiana Jones fan, then I highly recommend you check out the Indie Guy, who was one of the awesome people I met at this event. He absolutely loves Indiana Jones, and it was honestly so cool seeing how much he loved the game. I, unfortunately, felt a little different. After finishing our 2-hour play session that included 3 missions, I found myself conflicted between the critical side of my brain and the emotional side. I think given what this game has set out to do, create a cinematic immersive experience, the game nails it to a staggering degree, but it also does so at the sacrifice of fun. So trying to be unbiased, I appreciate that as far as a game setting out with a goal, congrats, mission accomplished. But I also found myself a bit bored by the game, and I want to break down where that comes from and how that will influence how I would recommend this game, because ultimately, I do recommend it, assuming you like Indiana Jones and like immersive experiences. So let's start with the way the game looks, which is undeniably incredible. I only experienced a single bug when playing, when I tried to throw dynamite at a cave full of scorpions, which did cause the game to crash, but I have full confidence that a crash like that will be fully fixed by release. I obviously can't show it because Bethesda provided the B-roll, but I think other YouTubers will also say that aside from the odd crash, the game ran very well and looked immaculate. Admittedly, the game was running on a system with a 4090 in it, so anything could run well on it, but regardless, I was impressed with how realistic it looked, and I appreciated certain decisions when it came to the camera. Because while most of the game takes place in first person, there are many points where the camera is pulled into a third-person view, such as when climbing and swinging with the whip. I think, while this did feel awkward to some people I talked to, is actually a really smart solution to a problem in some first-person games where, especially when climbing intricate structures, your face is borderline flush against the surface you're scaling. It can not only be an issue for visibility, but it can also expose an ugliness that textures have inherently when you are inches away from them. Plus, I was seriously impressed with how smooth the transition from first to third person was. It was slick and had not an inch of awkwardness, and that's important because a transition like this could easily break immersion, and this level of quality is upheld across the game's presentation. All combat, movement, cutscene animations are lifelike and again, genuinely impressive. The only animation I felt was wonky was, at times, when an enemy was punching, their punch would connect far before their arm was extended, which made parry timings hard to gauge. Aside from that, things felt good, which is important for a game like this because nearly every design decision felt as though it was made in the name of a cinematic and immersive experience, and achieving that goal would be significantly harder if the game didn't look so lifelike. Facial animations, especially in cutscenes, were really great, and elevated the scenes to feel like a movie. Couple this with some great writing and a stellar soundtrack, and it left me feeling like, on the presentation front, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has a lot going for it, and dare I say, it's one of the best looking games I've played this year. Now, if those ambitions are too much for the average PC or console to handle, then those praises will be tapered, but I'm confident that things will look this good on release. Sound design was also a highlight, and my god, Troy Baker delivers a stellar performance here. UI elements also never crowded the screen, yet provided all the necessary information, which I don't normally praise, but again, when the game is trying to be immersive, it's important. Now, with all of this praise, you might be wondering why I seemed a bit more negative at the beginning of the video, and that's primarily because of the gameplay. I want to continue with the positive stuff, so let's talk about what I liked in gameplay. For one, hand-to-hand combat was surprisingly fun. Punches have weight, the impact is satisfying, and parrying mostly felt good. I think they really nailed the timing for these attacks. It was hard to nail, but not so much as to make the risk too high. I worry that a skilled player could hit this timing too much, making the combat too easy, but the game has a wide selection of difficulty modifiers, especially for combat, and had I not been on the time limit, I would have given hard mode a shot, but for my playthrough, I stuck to normal. An individual encounter will never be too much to handle, but there is no health regeneration, as health is regained through bandages that are found across the map. Instead, the challenge came from taking on multiple encounters back to back, and being in positions where I only had 1 health point left, and having to play around that was immersive. Because Indy is an average guy. He shouldn't be allowed to take down an army alone, or at least not without some heavy strategizing. This pushed me to get more creative and led to more interesting gameplay, which I appreciated a lot. Stealth in this game is more prevalent than you think, and mechanically, there's a lot to love. Stealth takedowns are not a given, and you need to instead find a blunt object to knock out an enemy. This creates a really nice loop where you're scouting ahead, finding a blunt object, and then doinking a Nazi in the head. I really like that a takedown by punching is valid, even if it will take a while. If bodies are spotted, then an area will go on alert, and these enemies have a wide patrol, meaning if you leave a body, there's a high chance I'll see it. Generally, and I think this is reinforced most in stealth, exploration is key. Healing items, lore, ammo, weapons is all going to be found lying around. So I was always looking for things to use, and because everything to some degree had a use, I felt rewarded for my curiosity. I think enemy layouts can be challenging, and there were many points where I thought, damn, how should I approach this? Despite the high enemy numbers, they weren't very smart, which makes this a good point to swap to my negative feelings on what I played. The AI in this game is fucking blind. There are plenty of settings for combat that can tweak how much damage you do, how much you take, but there are no settings for stealth. I don't think we need to tweak enemy density, but it would be nice for the full release to be able to include sliders for how fast enemies detect you, how quickly they lose track of you, because in the build I played, the AI were so dumb that it actually broke immersion. Now, I have talked to the team, and not only were they really great to speak to and obviously passionate, but they said AI was a big priority for them and that they expect it to be ironed out by launch. Once you get spotted in stealth, which will eventually happen, you might swap to your weapons, which can feel great. Each gun has kick, and when they run out of ammo, you can crack someone's melon with the blunt end of it. My only gripe, and this is a very personal one, is that you can't aim down sights, and your accuracy is very not. So I want to unpack why I think this decision was made, and I believe it's for a sense of immersion. The greatest form of immersion is when the player and their avatar, in this case Indiana Jones, feel the same. We're meant to feel like the average guy in his 40s who isn't moving like John Wick in his prime, and that's fine. It's especially why we have a stamina bar when climbing and sprinting. Now let's say the player is able to flick their mouse perfectly, headshotting every enemy. Well, now you don't feel like Indiana Jones, and the moment-to-moment fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants gameplay is instead a display of godlike skill compared to the actual military-trained enemies. By limiting how accurate you can be, we limit how much a player's skill can disconnect them from the player avatar. If this is what the game is going for, more power to them. However, this completely killed the gunplay for me. If I am not allowed to express myself in combat, why would I bother? I did have the idea to get closer to enemies. It would allow me to be scrappier and land more headshots, except a lot of the enemies took more than one, at times 2 bullets to the head. And when 2 people are in close quarters, gunfights become a numbers game, and one that I rarely came out of victorious. This was the biggest push the game gave me to stick to stealth and stay out of combat, which, fine, that's what Indy would likely do. But why not make the enemies hit more shots instead? By limiting the player's control, you limit their power, and limit their fun. It's not that they aren't good enough to do what they wish, it's that they are borderline walled off. If the enemies just swarmed you or had better aim, then it provides a challenge to the player that shouldn't be taken. But if they want to exercise the exclusive freedom provided by this being a video game, why not allow them? Chances are, if they, under these circumstances, tried so hard and were precise enough to make it happen, then it's clear player expression is more important than immersion, so the game shouldn't be worried about letting a player make that choice. I felt constantly punished for trying different tactics because there were so many points where I would just miss for no reason, and it made my experience feel ironically linear, even in the most open of spaces. Even the exploration is hindered by this. The first 2 levels, all of which were great by the way, are linear, but the third I was able to try in Giza was open. When traveling from one landmark to the next, specifically across the part of the map that didn't have anything between me and my waypoint, I would be constantly sprinting for a few seconds, walking while it recharged, and just holding W. I shit you not, as I was exploring this game, at this event that was so special, I pulled out my phone. I apologize if that's disrespectful, but on my end, it was a reflexive, well, I'm bored kind of action. I appreciate that Indy moves like someone in their late 40s, but this guy is so heavy, man. When swinging with the whip, you carry no momentum, and instead drop straight down when ejecting. You move slow, have no accuracy, but the redeeming quality of the gameplay, specifically when gunplay was lacking, is the whip. God, this whip is a fucking hammer. It sounds so good. It's full of impact. You feel the force, and the animation of it coming out is so satisfying. It's used plenty in combat, and it did not get old, and I'm confident that it won't lose its luster even in the context of the whole game. It's a small part of the game, but an iconic part of the character, and the team should be undeniably proud for nailing it. Another integral part of the character is Indy's work as an archaeologist. Puzzles, according to not just what the developers had presented to us, but to the trailers as well, were going to be a big part of the game, and would make you feel like a real archaeologist. Now, I want to mention that the moments we tried were from relatively early in the game, but I was very disappointed by how easy the puzzles were. Let me walk you through one of them to explain what I mean. I approached a wall with some slots for discs. I looked around and there's 3 discs. One has a bird, another a fish. Finally, one has a dog or something, I don't remember, it isn't in the B-roll. I look at these discs and immediately think, okay, just order them from closest to furthest from the earth. Fish, dog, bird. And that was the solution. I solved it and rolled my eyes. Really? That's supposed to make me feel like an archaeologist? Maybe if we're exploring an ancient Egyptian preschool? If memory serves, this was a side puzzle too, and look, if it's mandatory, then I get it. You don't want the puzzles to be too hard for people to get past. But for the side puzzles, give us some proper head scratchers. Most other puzzles were on the same level. The one where I needed to swing below a platform warranted someone to come over and tell me that I had to climb down with the whip, so who knows, maybe I'm just dumb in a special kind of way. Overall, despite these criticisms, I had a decent amount of fun exploring the world, seeing what's in different locations. So much so that I ran out of time and didn't finish the demo, though according to some people I spoke to, I was only a few minutes away. The main missions were a lot of fun, with the particular ones we played seeing us investigating a break-in from the night before, sneaking into the Vatican, and sneaking through a Nazi base. All of these missions were presented well, and it's where I think the highlight is, especially because the writing was very well done. You gotta remember, I'm not an Indiana Jones fan, so I think it really speaks to the story and the writing that despite not having a reason to care, I was interested in the plot, and I'm curious to see where it goes. So those are the major points I wanted to touch on in my demo. Overall, I think if you're a fan of Indiana Jones or immersive games that make you feel one with your avatar, then this is an easy recommendation. If you're not a fan of those, then I think it's best to wait for more reviews that come out on release. Personally, the lack of accuracy with the guns and the immersive design choices that come at the cost of gameplay, pacing, and personal enjoyment is a deal breaker for me. I was told that I'd be getting a review code for the game, so I will have a review out when it launches, but if I wasn't getting a code, I don't think I'd spend my own money on this. But I will go into the rest of the game with an open mind, because the issues I have are both fixable and, who knows, could improve as the game is in its final stages of development, or could improve as the game goes on, like the puzzles and enemy AI. So what do you think of the game, based on the trailers, this new gameplay, and of course based on the opinions of others at the event? Will you be buying Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? Let me know down below. And once again, I want to say a big thank you to Bethesda for flying me out to LA, allowing me to try the game, and just for the opportunity as a whole. It was a ton of fun, and I am very, very grateful. I also want to give a massive thank you to our channel patrons, whose names are on screen now. You can join the Patreon by clicking the link down below, and if you do, you'll get access to videos early and have your name in the credits too. Thank you all so much for watching these videos and allowing me to receive opportunities like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.